Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hey Woo Crew, welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and we are here for a solo episode today. And as I was sitting thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, this reoccurring theme keeps coming up for myself and for my clients. And so rather than beat my head against the wall looking for something novel and new to talk about, I'm following the thread. I'm allowing my environment to be my source of inspiration, and I am acknowledging that if this lesson keeps coming up for my clients and for myself, then it's probably perfectly timed for you as well, my dear listeners. And so, first, I'd just like to start by talking about this seasonal shift that we are in. In my last solo episode, we talked about the autumn equinox and moving into this season of fall, or marking the middle of fall if you're following that Celtic calendar more closely. And I don't know where you are in the world, but where I am, fall used to be quite fleeting. And as much as global warming worries me to no end, it is really lovely to be experiencing a longer autumn season this year. And the last several years, really, I've noticed that this season has lengthened in Calgary, where I am. One of the reasons that I'm really enjoying it, not only because it means there's no snow on the ground yet, but it's also because it's really allowing me to take the time to transition, to clean up my inner spaces as we prepare to go inwards for these long months, and to allow myself to begin to rest for longer because the nights are getting longer. It's cooler in the evenings and the mornings, and it just feels like this permission to sleep a little bit more, to rest a little bit more, to wear the cozy clothes. And especially as we move towards Samhain, the new year in the Celtic calendar, the witch's new year, this really liminal time of the year as well, a time when the veil between the worlds is thinner. It's lovely to have this gentle easing in to the dark and the cold, and accompanying it with some more internal practices and moments of pause and reflection and culling away what's no longer serving. Speaking of this liminal time of year, I'm interrupting my intro here to remind everybody, or maybe even introduce everybody to the fact that I offer something called Soul Council sessions. So these are 45-minute one-on-one sessions held over Zoom where we drop into a sacred space and I walk you through the process of calling a council of your soul guides, your spirit guides, to ask a question and or gain clarity around a situation in your life. These are available year-round. However, I find them to be extra potent at this time of year as the veil thins and we are more readily able to easily communicate with the other worlds. If this is something you're interested in, head on over to my website, myluminous.life.ca, and click on the Work With Me tab that says Soul Council Sessions, or of course, there'll be a link in the show notes here for you to book one of these and take advantage of this magical, mystical, spooky time. So I hope that you were able to take that last solo episode's information and weave some of these shifts into your day. I'm pretty sure I talked about, autumn cleaning being very similar to spring cleaning. It's at this time we're cleaning things up so that we can move inwards in a clean space. And in the spring, we're cleaning out the cobwebs that might have accumulated over the winter. And because tending to our inner and our outer landscapes, cleaning them up, reviewing what's no longer serving, removing the things that aren't serving, is in and of itself a bit of a to-do. It is a task. And because this feeling of being absolutely overwhelmed, drowning in a to-do list, if you will, to the point of paralysis has been coming up for some folks recently. That is what we're going to focus on today. The magic of lists or a to-do list or getting rid of a to-do list or ticking the things off. So I don't know about you, but this time of year tends to bring with it a lot of to-dos. The kids are firmly back in their routine of school. And for a lot of us, that means, not myself, but for a lot of people, that means that the dreaded back to school illnesses are being brought home. And so I had a client who had been really knocked out by a bout of COVID and had been almost unable to function for a bit longer than a week. And we had a session. She was just starting to feel better, but not fully on the mend for sure. And she just felt like life had really piled up while she was unable to do so many of those tasks. There were household chores to do. There was, decorating for Halloween. There was work chores to do. And there were some bigger decisions that she's been wanting to put her attention towards, that just all of it combined, she came and she was telling me that she just felt frozen, right? I'm sure that many of you are nodding your head like, oh yeah, I can resonate. A to-do list longer than my arm, and even the simplest tasks feel overwhelming and like I can't get them done because there's just so much to do. And so the very first thing that we did together, and that you, if you are in a similar place or starting to feel it pile up, could consider doing, is to first and foremost get every last thing, every last tiny item and to do out of your brain onto a piece of paper. It could be, picking up coffee beans and laundry and creating a costume for the kids' school play or for Halloween. Anything, any decision that is upcoming that is on your mind is like, this is going to have to get done. The first thing to do is get it out of your poor, overtaxed, overwhelmed brain and on to a piece of paper. Then the next step, and this can be a really tricky step for many of us, especially if you fall into that category of being a high achiever, or perhaps a strong, independent woman, or maybe a people pleaser, or maybe you're a little type A and you like to control how things get done. But we apply the 3 magic questions to every item on our list. And those questions are: does this have to get done? Does this have to get done by me? And does this have to get done now or today? So that's the first step. And sometimes you'll find that, things feel like they have to get done, but when we really sit with it, maybe some of them don't. And so, if it's something to do with, making cupcakes for the school, maybe you can buy them. Or putting up decorations for Halloween. Maybe this year you just dial it back and you carve 1 pumpkin instead of 5 or whatever it might be. But just really being honest and okay with letting some of the things go. The second question tends to be the hardest, and that is, does this need to get done by me? And the knee-jerk reaction of many of us is like, yes, or it's just easier if I do it than trying to explain it to one of my family members, whether it be a kid or a partner. Or, technically they could do it, but they won't do it the way I do it. And so I just would rather do it myself because it feels better to do it my way. And so this is a space where I would encourage you to do some inner work, some unpacking of the stories and beliefs around the why you feel you need to do the thing. I For context, I really struggle when my partner cleans the bathrooms because he uses paper towel instead of a cloth. And he goes through like half a roll of paper towels. I don't feel like things get as clean. It leaves little bits of fuzzy white stuff on surfaces. And yet, when he cleans the bathroom, I don't have to. And so I've really had to just ignore it almost, choose intentionally to be okay with the fact that that's how he does it. And when I do it, I'll do it my way. But both ways do result in a bathroom that is clean enough and cleaner than when we started. And that his having done it means that it's one thing off my plate. So it's really, really normal to feel like we want to micromanage or control the way that things get done, the how of them getting done. And part of that is just habituation. We've been raised in a world that tells us that, good women take care of others. Often there's still, even if outwardly we don't buy into the stereotypical gender roles that exist in our society, they do exist in our society still. So those stories can come into play. We look at, the patterns of behavior of our mothers and our fathers. And, did mom always do all of the things in the house and never ask for help? Or never let anybody even help if they offered. There's all sorts of ways to start to unpack this, but I would challenge you, if you are feeling overwhelmed by your to-do list, to choose one thing today to delegate and let it go. Let whoever is doing it, whether it's your child or your partner or, I don't know, a friend who's offered to help out, let them do it their way and let done be good enough. And then the last of those 3 questions, again, is that does it need to get done today? So there's some things that do need to get done today. If all the dishes are dirty, you probably need to get them clean to eat. And there are other things that maybe don't need attention right away. And so a list in its magicalness allows you to recognize the items that don't need to get done right away and to also have them somewhere so your brain isn't going like, don't forget to do that, don't forget to do that, right? So when we have the things that need to get done out on a page and we keep that page or we rewrite it in a more organized fashion once we've delegated some and maybe ticked a few off entirely, but keeping a list somewhere so that your brain doesn't have to expend a whole bunch of energy remembering all of the things that you need to do so that you can clear up cognitive space and give yourself back the gift of some energy to actually start ticking the things off the list. The layer deeper that you can go with these kinds of practices when it comes to overcoming that decision fatigue or the sheer overwhelm of too much to do is to further categorize the things on your list into levels of confidence with the task. So, for instance, if you have look for a new job on your list, but you're not even sure exactly what you want that job to be or where you'd go about looking or how you'd build your resume so that you can look for those types of jobs, then that's going to be a lower confidence task. And so if you really do have a mountain of things that have piled up, it's probably not a today task. If you already have a job that is paying the bills and it's not your dream job and you do want to change, unless you've got some other things cleared off and feel like you have a bit of spaciousness, that's probably not going to be the first item you want to tackle. If you're wanting to make headway on a task that you are less confident about, making sure that you do it in the morning when you still have energy. There's 2 kind of thought processes around tackling a big old to-do list. One is like tick off a bunch of small, easy, simple things to give your brain that boost, that reward of like, whew, I got those things done. However, we do know that you will have the most energy and the most clarity in your mind at the beginning of the day before you've already gotten tired with all those other tasks and decisions. And so if there's something that's big that's on there that really does need to be addressed or begin to be addressed, making sure that you put your effort towards it earlier in the day and get at least a chunk done and break it down. Break it down into smaller subtasks and celebrate yourself for any little achievement or moving the ball forward, even if it's only by a tiny fraction. There is so much magic in the dopamine rush of ticking a thing off the list, and an added layer of neuroscience magic, if you will, in celebrating your achievements, your accomplishments, even if they feel small. I recently did some coaching upgrading, and the program that I took, the gentleman who created the program talks about our sage brains and our saboteur brains. And we all have different saboteurs. I'm a little bit of a procrastinator and so an avoider. I think that is the name of that saboteur. I can't remember my other top one right now, but the number one for everybody is the judge. And when we have a mountainous to-do list, it is so normal for our judging brain to come online and hurl all sorts of nasty things at us. Like, how can you be so inept? And like, I can't believe you can't get this done. Or how did you let it get this bad? Or why can't you just start and tick something off? And so it's really important to interrupt that process and to celebrate the small steps. And sometimes the small step is like, I don't know, maybe you have mountains of laundry to do. And the first smallest step is getting it all out of the hamper and onto the floor so you can sort it. And maybe taking a pause and doing a little happy dance and congratulating yourself for doing that first step. It feels so silly, and it works because that celebration, that yippee-ki-yay kind of feeling that you can create, you can invoke it in your body, even if it feels goofy as fuck. It gives you a lovely boost of dopamine, just like ticking something off a list. And that dopamine fuels up your sage brain, or the brain that allows you to be clear and calm and responsive in your life instead of reactive. The other last little categorization piece that you can do with these kinds of lists. So I mentioned that kind of confidence level. Are you confident about the item? Are you somewhat confident? Are you less confident? The other kind of three-way split you can create, so almost like a grid with this, is, does it need to get done now? Does it need to get done soon in the next, you can make a timeline for that, or is it a later task, right? And it can be really helpful. The one thing we want to make sure that we're not ever doing is leaving the low confidence later items perpetually in that bottom corner of this organization grid, because they do still take up some mental real estate. If it's for instance, looking for a new job, if you're wanting to change career paths or something, that's a real desire, and it's not just going to disappear if you ignore it. So again, it's about managing that pile of to-dos, managing that overwhelm, getting to a place where you can create some spaciousness and ease so that you can have the mental capacity to make headway on those bigger, harder tasks or to-dos on your list. I don't know if it's weird that I decided to do an episode of a Woo Curious podcast about lists. And I know that if you're here with me, you're on this journey, then you're curious in the woo and the energy healing work and all of that. But you're also here because a lot of what I talk about is finding ways to come back into our power and to allow ourselves rest. And there's just no way to do the inner work required for some of these bigger shifts if we can't breathe under the weight of our to-do lists. And so as mundane as it feels to be talking about a list, a to-do list, and the magic therein, it often is the first step when I sit down with clients. And sometimes midway through our time together, there'll be a day. I was with this client I started off with talking about where she just showed up and she's like, I'm paralyzed. I can't. I don't even know what I need. And so, again, if you are feeling that way, making a list like this, sorting through it can be really helpful. And you might want to find a friend to do it with. Guaranteed, you've got a friend who could benefit from you helping them sort through and see the bigger picture. And if you have a friend who feels that way, they would be probably really grateful for that support and really happy to return the favor because, as I often say, you cannot see the ingredients from inside the bottle. And when you're that overwhelmed, sometimes just borrowing somebody else's brain who's not attached to all of the items on your to-do list, they don't care if your partner cleans the bathroom with paper towel instead of a cloth. It can be really helpful when you're at that kind of point of like, I don't even know. I don't even know how, what can I do? This is also something that working with my clients, I find really starts to shift during our time together. We can start in that place of overwhelm. I'm thinking of another client that I just wrapped up my time with who came to me. She said, quite literally drowning in life, didn't know even where to begin, didn't feel like she had 2 minutes of time in the day to tend to herself, let alone the hour and a half every day that she now has at the end of working together. When I asked her to quantify how much time she feels like she created in her days, for her, even I was surprised by the amount of time she felt she had. And she admitted she wouldn't have thought that was even possible. So, if you are feeling overwhelmed, like you are at the end of your rope, like something's got to give, and I sure hope it's not my mental health, if your mental health's still on board, please reach out. I am accepting one-on-one clients right now, and I'm really, really looking forward to supporting those of you who are stepping in with me during this season of turning inwards and tending to ourselves and entering the season of rest, creating some ritual and putting some support in place as we move into what should be a restful time of the year because it's dark and it's cold, and yet can often be a very hectic time of the year. I'm foreshadowing December here, folks. Uh, okay, I'm going to wrap up there. Let me know what you thought about this episode. I'm curious to see how it lands for folks. And let me know if you take these tips away and put them into practice and how it feels, how it works for you, how it helps. I always love hearing from you. Come on over to @IamEileenMarch on Instagram. Leave me a rating and a review here wherever you're listening to your podcast. It helps ever so much. And next week, I'll be back with another guest episode. Bye for now.